Hi, friend. I'm so glad you're here. You might notice if you are a follower of the show that it looks and feels a little different around here. So I'd like to start off this episode by explaining that I have changed the name of my podcast from the Mindful Drinking Movement to the Radical Healing Podcast. This is why I've done this, because changing my drinking and transforming my relationship with alcohol, I'm realizing has really it's been the big, I don't edit my podcast if you didn't know that, has been more of the beginning of something rather than a complete thing in and of itself. So in my process of making alcohol unimportant, it's not only been that I've gotten time freedom and money freedom and energy freedom and sovereignty and all of these things back to myself. But when that happened and when now that I've really embodied that, life is really opening up in a different way, and who I feel called to be and what I feel called to do. And by called, I mean just like listening, tuning in more to how my soul speaks to me or wants to or tries to communicate with me. Because the noise of life and the noise of alcohol use really made me deaf to that for a long time. And now that I can sense it and hear it because my instrument, my body and my mind is more attuned to this different kind of frequency and energy, I feel so compelled, almost like I have to. I am opening up my platforms, my podcast specifically right now in this context, to include a broader scope of healing modalities. So what that will look like is me interviewing people and making this space more of a forum where I'm going to meet and discuss and have radical healing conversations with other healers and therapists, coaches, light workers, mystics, whoever feels compelled to be a guest. I'm actually on another platform where I'm meeting tons of these people, and it's been so exciting, and I'm really excited to bring their knowledge and their wisdom to more people's ears and minds and hearts, where more people can be helped. Because in my little egoic way, I think what I've made my earlier podcast, and although like much of it is very honest and vulnerable and open, as I kind of reflect back on who I've been in the process of when I started my original podcast, it feels like it's just very about me and my path and like how I can help you by sharing what me and myself and I have learned. And to me now, even though at the time like that was really important, to me now it just feels a little bit, I guess, small. Like I've just like something that I've outgrown. And so, yeah, I really want to make this a bigger conversation and community and be part of something more far-reaching, I guess, more inclusive. I want to hear different voices. I want you to hear different voices than just mine. And yeah, it's been like the Jessica album, I guess, and now I'm making compilation albums. We could say it that way. So that's what I'm doing. And these speakers, these guests, are going to be people, they are people who have had their own personal radical transformation, usually with alcohol use or surfacing from alcohol use or drug addiction types, but that might change as well. But so far, that's who I'm speaking to. And further, these people have who like I feel like we will share this commonality, who on the other side of having changed their relationship with alcohol have found this deeper calling or purpose in life, and how that message can be good medicine for you if you are still in the throes of waiting around in your alcohol attachments and how you can dismantle those for yourself and find something more fulfilling on the other side. So these are more inspirational stories of transformation that that more people can find themselves inside of. Because not everybody likes the food that I make, so to speak. Not everybody wants hot sauce on their stuff, you know. Some people are vegan. Some people are carnivorous. I'm making a food analogy if you didn't catch on. But like not everybody eats what I make. So I am bringing more chefs to my place so that more people can find something to eat over here. That was a weird analogy, but I hope it maybe worked for you in some way. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. And if you feel like you would be a good guest on my show, feel free to reach out to me. Our show, the Radical Healing Podcast. Welcome to the Radical Healing Podcast. I don't have a guest, however, today. It's me. It's still me, and I still will be speaking on addiction transformation because it is very important and necessary for so many people, like so many of us who hide and so many of us who don't know how to get the help that we want and need and seek. And maybe still for many people, these traditional ways of healing, these traditional ways of remedying alcohol use, the mainstream ones, they just don't necessarily work for everyone. So I will continue to be here speaking to what I feel like I deeply and intimately know about, which is alcohol transformation, alcohol use disorder. So that's still my forte, but I'm just expanding this conversation. So if you are feeling inclined to changing your drinking, however, you haven't taken action on it necessarily yet, or maybe you've tried things and they haven't worked, or you just haven't found what works for you, this episode is for you. This episode is for you if you are kind of sitting on the fence about changing your drinking. You feel hesitancy, you feel resistance, or you're just waiting for some day that is never coming. This episode, my intention of this episode is to help you find a compelling and personal reason to change your lifestyle when it comes to drinking, because it must be important to you. It can't be, it doesn't work if we just piggyback on the reasons that other people have found that work for them, or what I like to call them like something that like an AI could write for you, or something that someone tells you why it is or should be important, why you should do this. Shoulds are always someone else's advice. So if you feel like you should do something, it's probably not your own inclination. It's coming from someone else. And these types of whys, right, WHY, in all caps maybe, and like with my quotey fingers around them, these whys are not solid enough to take you for the long haul. And just an aside about AI. AI. I mean, I'm sure it definitely has its validity and its efficacy and the reasons why it could be helpful and useful for some things. But I actually bought an online course about addiction psychology, because this is what I'm interested in, and I really wanted to, deepen my understanding of addiction psychology and neuroscience specifically. But this fucking course was so boring. Like addiction psychology, yes, that had me, right? And like the list of content that it was supposed to discuss and give me this breadth of understanding, compelling. Yes, I wanted that. So here's another analogy for you. Like I wanted the thing. I wanted that result. I wanted that certification. I wanted that understanding. And when I went into it, I could tell it was written by a robot, and it was so goddamn boring. I was like stabbing my eyes out, falling asleep trying to get through this course. And so I returned it because I could tell they had made it, the whole thing with AI, it had no soul, no human touch, just zero emotional content. They hadn't made it personal or personable in any way. There was I felt nothing for it. And so that is the parallel that I'm drawing. If you feel nothing for your reason why, then it is not going to help you succeed in the thing that you want to do. In this context, probably radically changing your drinking to change your life. So here is my advice on how you can find a personable and a strong and a powerful why that you can embody, that will help you, that will last, that has longevity. So let me mention quickly that this particular methodology works best for people who consider themselves gray area drinkers, right? So if we look at alcohol use on a spectrum or a continuum, we could look at the beginning stages or the light kind of use, experimental use. Like if that is you, you're probably not even here because you might not even be experiencing issues in your life because of alcohol. Yet light use, people who don't really feel attracted or drawn or attached or like this relationship with alcohol, just like it's kind of whatever, you know. I don't know if you're even here. Then we have people who use chronically or habitually for an interim, right? For a long term. And mainly I'm speaking to you because this is how I used to identify. Like I understand this part of the spectrum the best. So if you find yourself as a gray area drinker, maybe your alcohol use isn't causing life or death situations for you yet, or it's not, you're just, that's not how you identify. Like people wouldn't look at you and noticeably be like, oh my God, every time Deborah drinks, she just falls flat on her face. I'm like, we're worried about here. Maybe that's not you. Maybe it is, but maybe it's not. But mostly the people who relate to this content and who this works for the best are people who identify as gray area drinkers, not necessarily problematic, but sensing that something is off, you would like to change it, or it does cause you problems, but it's not, again, it's not imminent danger for you. On the further end of the continuum in the spectrum is alcohol dependence. And you are welcome here if that is you, but I am not sure that my message in particular is maybe what you need, which is probably more a sip of water, which is probably something more immediate, maybe even medical intervention. Maybe what you need is a more medicalized or a more thorough and hands-on support with the goal being total abstinence in order to save your life. If you are here, I love you, and please take what you need from anything that I'm saying that can be helpful or useful to you. But again, my methodologies I feel work best for people who are in the gray area drinking part of the continuum. Okay. Also, part of my message is I do not tell people to be sober. I do not tell people what to do, but some people might need that. So if you need that, my language might be too flexible for you. And I'm not promoting drinking or encouraging anyone to like go back to trying moderation. I don't even use the lexicon of moderation. My approach is really about changing your story and your inner dialogue about alcohol use so you can make it less important, less relevant, and probably organically leading to a life of very little to no alcohol just naturally. But some people don't have the luxury of time on their hand to do that. So if you are someone who is in medical emergency with your alcohol use, this is not exactly what you need. Okay, all of those addendums aside, I don't tell people to be sober. I don't tell people what to do. Because then it's a should. And then, in my humble opinion, when people are told what to do, they immediately don't want to do it. And this sets up the rebel part of our psyche that then goes to bat for us and then wants to prove that we can do whatever the F we want because we're an individual and nobody has control over us. So I don't use any kind of mandating language like that. On the other side of that, what I do help people do, and what this episode is intended to help you do, is to find something that feels truly personal and compelling, a why that is strong, that you have emotional charge with. Like when you say it, there's like an emotional quality that moves through your body and your being. This is what makes it important to you. This is what makes it personal. This is what actually gives you some fuel and some fire to follow through when things feel sticky and icky and you don't want to default to habituated drinking patterns that you're trying to change. So I'm going to give you some examples of the shoulds or the selling pain points of alcohol reduction, like something you could get from an AI. But I see it all over the place on social media and whatnot. And these things that don't work, like I think they're meant to be helpful, but they don't work. And maybe you've tried some of these on and realized that it was just actually really ineffective. They don't work in overriding beliefs, subconscious beliefs that are just going to cancel out that point being effective enough to create change. So these are just commonly tossed around, are meant to inspire, right? But I'm going to give you some examples of what these reasons are, these whys, and then I'm also going to give you examples of how your subconscious programming can easily counteract those whys, making them inefficient, not important, not personal enough, making them feel like an AI gave it to you. Okay, and the first one is fitness or weight loss. Right? Drinking less or not at all will help you fit into your skinny jeans and feel more confident in the swimsuit. And yes, that's probably true in most cases. And it may work for a short-term goal, like needing to show up at like a 30-year high school reunion or your best friend's wedding or something. But here's an example of rationalizing your way out because your subconscious programming has a much stronger hold on you than your conscious rationalizations, your conscious rational conversations that you have with yourself. It might sound something like, oh, well, the amount that I'm drinking is balanced by my otherwise healthy lifestyle. Like I'll just go to yoga and drink a green juice and then I'll just work out harder and cut out sugar or not eat. This is super counterproductive, as you can tell. And again, this why might work for short term, but it's definitely not going to be a long term or a lifestyle why that gives you lasting habit change. Another one is to save money. Cool, yeah, who doesn't want to save money? Have you done the math on how much you are spending on alcohol each month? Because when I did the math back in 2020, at the height of my drinking demise, I calculated that I was spending like $100 plus per week on red wine. So like over $400 a month. And that didn't stop me from buying it again that evening. And this why tends to only make people cut back on their spending on other things so that they can afford their beverages. It really just makes you like rearrange your budget because in the moment of purchase, you will rationalize how you can afford it, even if your goal was to set out to save money by drinking less. The moment your subconscious begins to override your better intentions, you're going to rationalize why you should afford it, why you should pay for it, even if you will regret it later. Like, for example, I know someone who would deliberately overdraw her account to buy alcohol because she was willingly accept a $35 overdraft fee to have what she wanted in the moment. And the save money why, and acknowledging how much you're spending on alcohol tends to just fill people with shame and like a fuck it, do it anyway kind of mentality. So it's rather a self-destructive why that backfires and creates shame and remorse. So I would not recommend this being your why. It's great knowledge to have, but it's not a strong enough and compelling personal reason. Another one is having more energy and motivation to do healthful things on the weekend. And sure, that sounds really good until the weekend hits, and then your default programming, which is attached drinking to Friday, starting on Friday, for example, or maybe it's Becky's birthday party or it's wine tasting girls weekend or whatever. This why often ends in Sunday being ibuprofen and coconut water day, because more energy and healthy activities on the weekends why only really works Monday through Thursday, because you haven't changed the subconscious default programming that attaches your weekends to alcohol. Yes, of course. Wouldn't we all love to go canoeing or backpacking or take our friends to the art museum and do these more healthful things? Of course. But if we haven't changed the underlying dialogue, the internal talk, the rationalizations, and the storytelling that we're doing to ourselves behind the scenes, then it becomes easily thrown off in any moment of triggering or temptation. Better relationships. Yeah, who doesn't want better relationships? But at the root of this statement is likely a desire for other people to change to meet your expectations. And it negates the fact that every relationship with anything is a reflection of the one that you have with yourself. So using this as your why is only really helpful if you frame it in the context of you wanting to show up differently as a partner or a parent or a child or a friend or what have you. This why can work better than the others, but it has to be you-centric. It has to have a resounding significance that can override your ego and your prioritized attachments to drinking, which is harder to do. And the last one is, I want to feel better. This is a great why, for sure, on the surface, but listen to this justification and how it can actually work against you unless it is deeply clarified. So if you are reciting to yourself, or your mantra is that I want to feel better, and you still have a deeply embedded belief that that big fat glass of wine makes you feel better, then you feeling better still includes drinking as a means to feel better, rather than cultivating an ability to sit with your discomfort. So these are some whys that are touted around that should work, right? Other people's ideas, AI generated content ideas of why you might feel like it's important to change your drinking. And always, 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 your subconscious programming and your deeply embedded self-talk will rationalize for you in any given moment about why you deserve a drink, why it's going to make you feel better, why you can fix it later, why now is not a good time. All of that stuff is the story machine, the subconscious story machine that is really where you need to look and where you need to revise. Really, any of these whys could work for you if you do that kind of subconscious belief mining and reframing. And this is what has worked for me. This is the why that has worked for me. And this is also the methodology that I teach to my clients. And it's kind of twofold, really, when I think about it. It can really be broken down into two really strong pillars. And the first one is identity. And that identity, your self-concept, the components of your personality that you self-identify with, and the parts of that adhere to drinking norms and attachments without self-reflection or analysis are what are controlling your decision-making processes. Because we really don't ever do anything that feels out of line with who we believe ourselves to be. Like when I called myself a wino, like flat out. And that was really how I identified. And I made it kind of this joking manner, so it was palatable. Drunk mommy, ha ha, wino. But like all of that was informing who I believed myself to be. And so my actions were completely in line with who I thought myself to be, with who I was making myself to be. This construct, this self identity that I had formed over time and that I was living inside of. But something that's really important to be aware of is that self concept and the way that you identify is flexible and malleable if you know how to look at it objectively and change it around. And we do this with self reflection and with compassionate analysis. So, personality, right? I'm using these words interchangeably. Identity and self concept and personality, they can be thought of as like a filtration system that has its own biases, and all information is put through this system. And anything that confirms that which already exists in this system is kept and used to reinforce the system, and anything contradictory is disregarded. Which is why it's really easy to disregard information about alcohol being horrible for our health and horrible for us. It's your mind will just give it the boot if it doesn't fit into your self-concept. And one that I deeply bought into was that red wine was good for my heart, and it was gonna get me a skinny waist, and it was good for me. So I made it be good for me. And anything that showed me otherwise, I just didn't look at. I wouldn't even acknowledge it. And so that's just an example of our filtration systems, our personality being a filtration system, our identity being a filtration system, and how we are constantly looking for confirmation bias. That is what the mind does. I like what Joe Dispenza says about your personality, and it's that your personality creates your personal reality. So if you want to have a different personal reality, you need to look at the parts of your personality that are keeping you attached to something that is no longer serving you or helping you. So what gets to change is the way that you self-identify, and not totally, like you don't have to become somebody that you're truly, totally not. But what is helpful and important to do if you want to change your drinking is to be able to look at the parts of your identity that are attached to alcohol use and consumption, and how you can gently and compassionately have different conversations with those parts of you and change your mind at a subconscious level. I do this with hypnosis and also with neuro-linguistic programming. And this is what we are doing inside of my upcoming group program. It's called What Do I Know? And what do I know is like a play on words. This is why it's called that, because what you know or what you think you know is keeping you in habituated patterns of alcohol use. We have to expand what we think we know. We have to be willing to question what we think we know and what we believe to be true about ourselves, other people, and the world, what we believe to be true about our perceived need to drink, what we believe to be true about why we tell ourselves that we need alcohol to feel better or that we need alcohol to do XYZ for us. It's really just a super strong belief system, but it is flexible, and you can play with it, and you can shift it, and you can change it. And when you do that, your reality also shifts, becomes different, and something that you can play with in maybe a more enjoyable way. Because for me, I don't know about you, but like when I was really addicted to drinking wine all the time, it felt like a very small world. It felt like things were the same. I had the same disgruntlements, the same stresses, the same annoyances, and like only one way to deal with them. And so when you change that story that you only have one way to deal with discomfort or unhappiness or anxiety or depression, your world becomes a little bit bigger, a little bit different. Maybe some other opportunities present themselves. You learn what your capabilities are in different ways. When you change the story, that's why it's called What Do I Know? Change your story about alcohol. Because when you change your story, you really change your belief structure at a subconscious level. And this is what allows you to have habit change, be lasting and long-term. So that's really the first pillar, is identity shifting. And then the second thing that I have found to be true, like across the board in working with people to heal their alcohol use disorders, is that regardless of your spiritual beliefs or your religious affiliations, alcohol is often subconsciously being used to fill a void, to like remedy this sense of loneliness or detachment or disconnect from a sense of something greater, or a sense of life being bigger than just little you or little me, you know. Alcohol has this way of really isolating us into our own pain and suffering and making the world feel small, when in reality it's actually infinite and big, and that we are an inherent part of that, and that we were born like that, but that we forget, and that our trauma and our pain cause us to create these maladaptive habits that were at one time helpful, but now we're realizing that they're not, and that we want to change them. And this is like all part of this beautiful journey of life, and perhaps your soul's journey, your karmic journey that you're on. So I like to iterate that there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with your path or your journey. It's like a coming home to this different realization, or this awakening that there's really nothing missing in your life. What's missing is you. And to turn into your inner world and to tend to that, and let things be messy sometimes, and to learn how to sit with your emotions, simultaneously making efforts to connect with this something greater. And it can be whatever terminology you like to use, like God or universe or spirit, or if you're agnostic or atheist, whatever words that you like to use, it doesn't really matter. But it is that sense of being connected to this source of life that isn't just small and trivial and painful worlds. We're not meant to live like that. We're meant to live in community and in connection with each other and with the earth and with the greater source, with the greater spirit of life. And when we don't have that, subconsciously what we're doing is trying to get that sense of relief and connection and joy from alcohol. For those of us who can identify with what it feels like to be addicted to alcohol, if you really honestly truly think about it, that's what's happening in many cases. And I don't like to use like blanket statements, but in every case. And so that's also something that we work on inside of What Do I Know, is how you personally find and use daily practices and rituals that will immediately and gradually replace ritualistic alcohol use, but practices that feed your soul and that nourish your body and that help you really truly feel supported and nourished and well, so that the desire for alcohol to self-soothe just gets crowded out. It just like becomes a little bit more obsolete, less important, less relevant. And that's the idea. And what people find when they start implementing these rituals in their daily life is that when they do drink, they can definitely notice the difference or the contrast between how they feel during and after intoxication is vastly different, less enjoyable, not as comforting, as connecting with something that is deeper and more relevant to life, because once you start doing that, you really give yourself a sense of, oh, this other thing is possible. I have these other resources and methods and ways of feeling good that are really much more, they're longer lasting. They give me energy. I strangely have more money. My relationships are better. My body feels more like my friend, right? So all these other like topical things that seem like they should be important change and become reflective of the relationship that you are cultivating with yourself and your personal sense of that which is greater. And it's really beautiful. And I invite you to come on this journey with me, with us, if you feel called, if you feel compelled. I promise I won't hurt you. We start on the spring equinox. So this year in the Gregorian calendar, March 21st of 2025, it is a 6-week program. There is a new piece to work on, a new subconscious reprogramming piece that happens every week. And we will also meet live for coaching, meeting you where you are, holding space for you to have your experience be valid. And so you can be in community with other people who are doing the same thing. So you know that you're not alone, and there's nothing shameful about wanting to change your lifestyle habits and create something that's more healthful and life affirming and fulfilling. There's really no shame in that. It's really just taking this step into the mystery, which is actually, I think, one of the more exciting things to do in life is like, yeah, you don't know. You don't know. Like, it took me a long time to change my drinking because I was like so afraid of what I didn't know. Who would I be without alcohol? What would I do with my time? Like, so strongly attached and self-identified with wine culture and being a wino and all this shit that I didn't know. And maybe you don't know. And I want you to know that like it's totally okay that you don't know. It's totally okay. From my experience and what I've been through and what I hold space for other people to go through, I feel like it's just so beautiful to be able to gather people like you and to hold space for you and to support you in creating this transformation and this transition for yourself, because it's totally worth it. And on the other side of things, you will probably realize something about yourself that has been buried for a long time. Maybe it's some part of your soul's yearning or your soul's calling, but it's hard to hear that when we're deeply embedded in alcohol use or really entangled with this thing that like sucks a lot of our time and our energy. So, oh, and P.S. I love you. Inside of What Do I Know, this year I've also included a one-to-one session with me. And that one-to-one session is a deep hypnosis, a hypnotherapy session where I will help you locate and bring to the surface to look at and examine the really big reason around why you feel attached to alcohol. Why have you made it so important? Why have you made it such a big part of your life? And how you can gently and gracefully reframe that belief and give you a new, more empowering belief in its place. So that's part of the program this year. You can find more information about that here in the show notes. Thank you for joining me. And on my next episode, we will be bringing on our first guest of the Radical Healing Podcast. And that will be happening not next week because I'm out of town, but the following week. And I look forward to being with you again then soon. Have an amazing day. Be so in love with yourself, please, because you're amazing.